Violinist. The name of the program is the way to go. I invite you to join me each week at this time as we explore places to go and things to do. Today we're going to a concert, and we're going to start the program by a performance by my guest, who is Martin Stoner, who is a concert violinist. And today he's going to play for us the Recitativo and Scherzo by Fritz Kreisler. Martin Stoner. Well, I certainly think that was delightful, and that was Martin Stoner, who has come here today to join us and give us an insight into what it is that goes through the mind of a solo performer when he's up there on the stage. And Martin, I am certainly delighted that you could come here and join us today for the program. So let me ask you that question. What are you thinking? What's going through your mind when you're up there and performing, whether it's here in the studio or before an audience in a concert hall?
Well, Norm, as you know, it's always very difficult to come out and play completely cold, but you know that in the back of your mind, you're trying to do the very best that you can. That's really the most important thing, to try to give substance to what's on the printed page.
What's involved? The printed page is notes, but there's more to performing than just playing notes, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. I think the thing that I try to do before I come to a concert is to try to understand as much as possible not only what's in the technical area that's required, but really to understand musically the harmonies, the what's behind the notes, and to study or even to listen to other violinists, particularly those in the past, try to get an idea of understanding of what did Chrysler have in mind when he wrote this piece? What was he really trying to accomplish?
So playing the violin or any instrument, I suppose, it's a combination of technical skill, emotion. I'm sure there's a lot of emotion in what you do, and there's a lot of intellectualizing that's going on, isn't there?
Yes, I think so. I think the intellectual part of it comes beforehand. Just as if you're going to write a speech, you might set your ideas out ahead of time. When it actually comes to the delivery, you're simply working on what's necessary to come across in front of the lights, so to speak.
It's just analyzing actually what you're going to do before you even pick up the instrument?
That's correct. It's not always necessary to play with the instrument, to learn a piece with the instrument in your hand. A lot of times it's just as useful to have an overview of what you're trying to accomplish and make some mental notes to yourself of what you're going to do.
Do you hear the music in your head when you're reading it? That's a question that I've often, not being a musician myself.
I often see the music in my head, but every performer is different, and I think whatever works is what one should do. So what I like to try to do is to have an idea of the long line. Many people wonder...
I don't know what that means. What's a long line?
Well, let's say that you're playing a piece with a lot of notes, and rather than being a note counter and seeing if every note is going to be in place, I'd rather make sure that I got, let's say, from A to Z, to have the feeling of getting from the beginning to the end with some kind of a plan in between, rather than just saying, well, there's 26 letters and I want to make sure that I hear all 26 of those. That each one should be metronomically even, each one should be the same type of sound. To me, that's rather boring. And while there's a tremendous amount that is required to make 26 notes imperceptibly the same, or imperceptibly different, really, there's also, the performance can be enhanced by shaping that 26 letters into something that might have 4 groups of 6 plus 2, or perhaps 5 groups of 4 plus 6.
No, that's technical in a sense. So technique, of course, is important. Not everybody who can read music can play a concert.
Absolutely.
So you certainly have to have the skills, the training, the dexterity, knowing how to produce the sound.
All of that is very important, as is the desire to want to express something personally when you perform. It's not just enough to recreate what somebody else has put down on the paper. It's important for you to bring something of your own to it.
Getting out of the bare bones of the notes.
Exactly, yes. Getting out of what I call the skeleton. The notes have many different possibilities for interpretation. And there are just choices simply as you drive down the road, which direction you're going to go. It's like a road map. And you have many options to you. And depending on what choices you make, that reveals something about you as a performer, you as an artist.
Do you play differently the same piece when you play it a second time or a third time? I'm not talking about developing, but if you give a performance 2 nights in a row, would it be exactly the same?
I think that in general it's similar, but it's imperceptibly different. I think the overall concept will be the same, but it's more or less that you're in a different physical condition one night than the other. You might be nervous one night, you might be, otherwise in a different frame of mind. But what you try to do night after night is to continue to make whatever you're playing interesting. That if you get bored with a piece after the second or third hearing, your audience also is going to find that, and they're going to feel it. So what the challenge when I perform is each time to make whatever I'm doing, to bring something new, to bring something special, to imbue it with some kind of spirit or musicality that makes it fresh, not only for the performer, which maintains my interest, but for the audience as well, so that they also feel that they are with you at the moment that you are inspired, and that in a way you're communicating that instantaneous creativity beyond.
The other fact that we talked about was emotion. Now, some performers, you can see the emotion in their face. Some performers are impassive when they play. How much of what you're doing is emotion?
I think that when you watch different performers play, as you pointed out, sometimes a person will be completely immobile, so to speak. Others will be moving and dancing around the stage. I don't think it necessarily indicates a level of communication or being with the music, whether you move or don't move. I think it's more a question of a personal preference, as long as it doesn't exceed the bounds of what is really appropriate in the course of the audience. But
it is emotional for you, isn't it?
I think it is emotional, but it's not that I'm thinking an emotion when I'm playing. It's more that the composer has set down notes and put them in a fashion that there really are many different possibilities that can be drawn out. And each performer will draw out different ones. And the ones that I may draw out as compared to somebody else are usually a product of who I am as a person, what my education was, what my relationship is to that composer in general, whether I like his works, I don't like his works, whether it's a piece I'm excited about. And all of that comes and is translated and becomes a factor, so that the actual product is really a combination of many factors. And
is the audience a factor?
Oh, definitely. I think so.
Do you there are many types of audiences. There's the sophisticated audience. There's the very highly knowledgeable audience who knows every nuance of the music, as sometimes reflected in the critics, who will talk about, well, he played this, but he could have done this certain thing, which I don't understand at all. There's the person who just loves to hear the good music and doesn't know any of the nuances. Which audience you're playing for, or don't tell me all of them.
Well, I think one has to know how to play for different kinds of audiences, because each audience expects different things. For example, you mentioned a sophisticated audience. For a sophisticated audience, if one walks out and talks to them, they may look down their nose a little bit at you because, for example, as the violinist Nathan Milstein, who we all know is recently passed away, used to say, I can't understand why the younger generation of performers finds it necessary to be interviewed on the Johnny Carson show and this and that. We didn't have to do that in our day, and we did fine in our careers. Why do we need this extra crutch, this extra task to have that attached to us? Other people may say that, well, music seems to us to be really irrelevant and sort of elitist. And how are you going to make people who don't have a background in classical music understand it? And here, education is the key. It's important to talk to people, to help them understand what you're doing, to make them familiar with your tools and what's involved, and just to have exposure.
But you are, as all performers are, an artist in the sense of the word. But you also are an entertainer. And audiences are people who come to be entertained. And so I'm sure when you're planning a performance, you're thinking of the audience. I have interviewed some people on this program, orchestra conductors, who very carefully plan their programs because you don't want to bore your audience.
Oh, yes, it's absolutely imperative that you do, as you mentioned, as a conductor would do. The violinist or instrumentalist must do the same thing, simply to have a variety in the program, something that might appeal to different segments of the audience, or perhaps just to have enough contrast so that it doesn't become boring or monotonous, and to have pieces that, as you say, are show pieces, such as the one that I just played by Chrysler, as opposed to a more serious musical statement, maybe a sonata of Beethoven or Brahms or Schubert or Mozart, or or perhaps a contemporary work.
What's the path that a performer like yourself takes to becoming a solo performer? Did you start at a very early age?
I had an interest in music at an early age, but I never would say that I had a special upbringing. I had a very normal upbringing and came rather late to the violin. And it wasn't really until I came to college at Stanford University that I became interested actually in performance.
Well, how did what is it that caused that?
I was able to obtain some auditions with some well-known violinists, including Jascha Heifetz and Yehudi Menuhin, and they were very inspiring to have contact with them, to really get some encouragement, and to learn that I had a long way to go. And so I guess I felt that rather than being somebody that limited myself to a more academic kind of existence, that performance was something that I enjoyed and that got me very excited, and was something that I really wanted to do. And in particular, I always wanted to be a solo performer. Mm-hmm. And so I then was accepted to the Juilliard School, and I studied there with the late Ivan Galamian and his assistant, Miss Sally Thomas. And I think that the Juilliard School was, to me, the biggest single opportunity that I had in my career for hearing the level of playing, that the highest level of playing.
That's a question. How important is it to, number one, to have the Juilliard training, and number two, to be able to say that I have the Juilliard training?
Well, I think it's an interesting question because, of course, Juilliard has a special reputation all over the world for the excellence of its students. But as far as a student is concerned, it's a very valuable opportunity to hear some of the finest performers who have then gone on to major careers. Violinists like Itzhak Perlman and Pinka Zuckerman. Many of these people were in school and were there to be heard before they became as well known as they are today. And so being involved with that level of performer and having the opportunity to hear some of the finest musicians that are around today is a tremendous learning tool or device in and of itself. And then, of course, there's the faculty and what you can learn from a great pedagogue. And also,
are they tough teachers in Juilliard or any music school? Are they highly critical? Are they constructive? What's the, or does it vary from teacher to teacher?
I would imagine it varies from teacher to teacher, and since I basically only had one teacher, it would be hard for me to really comment on what the general norm is. But with my teacher was sort of an older European type of background. He was very strict and was very interested in making you work to the best of your ability. So he demanded lots of hard work and really strove for perfection. And I think that's the one thing that I really learned from him, was a tremendous discipline, and also from his assistant.
Discipline is very important.
Very important. After I graduated from Juilliard, I studied with David Nadian, the former concertmaster of the New York Philharmonic and a prize winner of several competitions, who gave me a tremendous amount of insight into other aspects, new compositions, different techniques that I had been exposed to at Juilliard. And really it was sort of, the most interesting part of what he gave me was helping me to achieve a system that worked in many different situations. And I really felt that his guidance was very important.
How does an artist such as yourself develop a repertory? Is it your own interests? Is it showy pieces? Maybe we've touched on this a little bit. Is it degree of difficulty? Well, what are the factors?
Well, that's interesting because I think every artist approaches the repertoire based on the areas that he or she really find a particular affinity for. And as you know, I've been very interested in doing some of the works of Fritz Kreisler and some of his contemporaries. And I think that if you can bring something special, for example, Rubinstein was very well known for his Chopin, it gives you some special area that you can really delve into from many points of view, maybe do all the works of that particular composer or just look for works that haven't been played too much, which is what I've tried to do with some of the Kreisler. But beyond that, I think that I try to be open-minded to as many different kinds of music as possible. And what I look for is, as soon as I identify an area that I like, I also try to find an area that I dislike. And I try to work as hard on the area that I dislike as the area that I do like.
Does that mean working every day on the violin?
Oh, it definitely means a lot of work. And there may be periods when, I have more time to put in than other times, in which case I'm not working as hard. But in order to be a concert violinist and to play at that level, you have to put in a tremendous amount of work, and it demands that.
And your solo appearances have taken you around the country and internationally as well, haven't they?
Yes, that's true. And I find that it's very interesting when you visit other countries and other cities to mingle with other musicians. And I've made a point when I've traveled often to invite artists from the local area, or if it happens to be abroad, to participate in programs. For example, when I played in London and made my debut there several years ago, I did a work that was rather rare by Kreisler, which was an arrangement of some songs for soprano and piano by Rachmaninoff, to which Kreisler had written an obligato. And I worked with a very fine British soprano there and performed several concerts in addition to my debut. And it was a very enlightening thing because everybody looks at music in a little different way.
So you play as a soloist with orchestras and also have given individual recitals. And I saw you in this, where I became interested in having you appear on the program, was a recital at Merkin Hall, wasn't it?
Yes.
On 67th Street in Manhattan. Now, is there a difference? I mean, what is the difference between appearing with an orchestra and doing a recital with your alone or with a accompanist or a singer?
Well, I think obviously the difference is that in the recital you have the ability to make your own programming, to choose the people that you want to work with, and so you have a certain degree of flexibility. In an orchestral appearance, basically you're engaged to play a particular work, and you have to work and mold what you do around an orchestra and a conductor. And so it's just a little bit different set of parameters. And so I've, up to this point, have really done more work as a recitalist because I felt that it offered me more opportunities to be creative with my programming and to reach out to the audience on my own terms. Whereas when I'm playing with an orchestra, I basically have to do what somebody else has already planned as far as programming. However, recently I've begun to step up my pace of orchestral engagements, and I'm looking forward to some the next 2 seasons that I think will be very gratifying.
So that was my next question: is what about the future? Is how far ahead are you projecting? And I guess programming is always done far in advance.
Yes, it is. I think most of the basic orchestral engagements are booked several years in advance, and many of the halls are also booked quite a bit in advance. And so one has to think now about what you're going to be performing 2 years down
But now
the
you're
road.
based in New York. You live in New York.
Yes, I am, and I find that it's a good place to hear what other people are doing and to sample and sort of be at the center of things, which I enjoy. On the other hand, when I travel to places, and I've played a lot in Chicago and on the West Coast, I find it terrifically interesting to go out and hear the concerts locally. There's so much to learn. There's so much wonderful music making that really happens all over the country that although those of us who are in New York like to think how special New York is, one ought not to lose sight of the specialness of other musical communities as well. There are wonderful things that are happening all over the country, and it's really very exciting to see.
I've seen copies of some of the reviews of your performances by critics, which are extremely favorable. And how important are they? Do you breathlessly await, as I suppose we've seen in the films, for the reviews to come in, and wonder whether or not it's going to be good or not?
Well, as you know, critics and the word of critics are very important. The other side of the coin, let's say, is that in some cases people are so worried about what critics say that rather than listen with their own ears and make their own opinions, they tend to think that whatever the critic says is right. So that if somebody gets wonderful reviews, may be a wonderful play, or may, in another person's estimation, not be so wonderful. And so it's not so cut and dry as one would think. And I tend to look at the historical aspect of critics, which, as far as most of the composers that we know from, let's say, Europe, most of those composers had the most awful reviews by the critics who were supposed to be so knowledgeable. So my feeling is that in many cases the words of the critics, while important, are not necessarily...
But the word is good, and
if the word is good,
from what I've read, the future is bright, and I thank you very much for being here today and giving us this insight into a performer. My guest today has been Martin Stoner, the